Then it always takes an extra minute. Hello, everybody. I'm Raina from Garden District Bookshop, and I want to welcome you all to Virtual Happy Hour again. Tonight, I will be talking to Trish Doller, and she's actually a very special guest. I can't wait to explain to you how Trish and I know each other. She has written 5 YA novels. The most recent, Start Here, that comes out in paperback in August 18th. And then she has her first adult novel that is coming out in March of next year. So we'll talk a little bit about that and get you guys all excited for that because I read that and I loved it. So here we go. I'm going to push the button down here and welcome Trish to the screen.
Hello.
Hello. I'm going to put us in the bookstore.
Ooh, I like it. I like your store.
Thank you. Yeah, it's beautiful. I am currently tuning in from a cabin in Georgia because I'm on a mini vacation.
Nice.
Where are you joining us from?
I am in my dining room because I am staycationing and have been since March.
Yes. This trip was to see, my mom and my sister live in Florida, which is where I'm from, Fort Myers, Florida. And Trish, you're in Fort Myers, right?
I am in Fort Myers.
I thought so. And they still live there. So they drove up from Florida and I drove over from New Orleans, and we're all holed up in this little cabin today and tomorrow, just kind of seeing each other. And then
nice. Very nice.
So yeah, I wanted to let everyone know how Trish and I know each other.
Yeah, because we've been kind of keeping that under, kind of under
right. I haven't
for a while.
talked about it because it's a little more complicated. I would say that we used to be co-workers.
Yes.
At Barnes and Noble in Fort Myers, Florida.
Yes.
Almost 2 decades ago.
It has been. Well, I've been away from there for probably 3 or 4 years. So yeah, but you know what? You were there before me.
Yes.
So when you came back, that's when we worked together, and our window was like really small because then you left again and then I left. So
yeah, we worked with a lot of the same people. So a lot of our coworkers overlap. And then, but our time together was
pretty short.
7 months, 8 months.
But you were easily one of my favorite coworkers in that small window. So, clearly we had some stuff in common.
Absolutely. It's fun. Those people that you're going to click with?
Yes.
Even if you could be somebody who we don't really hang out that often or whatever, but every time we do interact, and I feel like that's the way I felt about you. Like anytime we do talk, I was
Same.
like, we need to talk, and we get along. We seem to share some of the same interests, all of that stuff. So.
Exactly. And TJ set you up. He was our manager, and he set you up like I heard about Raina all the time.
Oh my gosh.
So the bar was set pretty high, and you hurdled it.
Yay! That's always good to hear.
Thanks, TJ.
Yeah, I don't know if TJ has Facebook, if he even knows we're doing this, but
someone will tell him.
Someone will tell TJ. And these get recorded and stay on our Facebook page, so then he can get pointed back toward it anytime. So anybody who's tuning in, if you have any questions for us, just type it in the comments. We can see all of that. So we will answer any of your questions about books, book selling, writing, sailing, which we're going to get into. Because your book, Start Here, and your new book for adults coming out next year has sailing as a theme.
Total coincidence, but yes. 2 books.
What a coincidence!
So
you wrote them.
I know, but I started working on Float Plan about 8 years ago. So it's been like a side project for that long, and it's gone through, a lot of different changes in terms of the character's age and the character, just a lot of changes have happened in that time. I edited it. We sent it out on submission to try to sell it. We got a lot of rejections. So I said, let's pull it back so I can figure out what's wrong before we try again. So it really is kind of a coincidence that I wrote Start Here, and then we sent Float Plan out, and this time it stuck. So I never intended to have back-to-back sailing books. It just sort of worked out that way. And I'm not mad about it because I like sailing. So
it works perfectly because I think, first of all, I think more adults should read YA young adult novels because they're so much fun. But some people don't, and they're just like, nah, that's for kids. And I'm like, no, please read it. As a bookseller, I'm like, no.
Yeah, the themes in YA are so good. So good.
They really are. And nowadays, like, I think people are picturing like a middle grade novel. When they think young adult, they're thinking like a middle grade novel, which is much more dealing with things as an adult you don't have to deal with. You know, more school issues and more bullying type situations and like simpler things, which middle schoolers need to read about because that's what they're going through. But as an adult, it's hard to relate to those themes. But YA isn't. Like, I very vividly, I mean, I'm years away, many like years away from my high school years and my early 20s, but I remember those and connect to those.
Exactly. I think we all do, you know. You can always, everybody remembers high school.
Right?
Whether it's a good remembrance or a bad, but we all remember what it feels like to be in high school.
Exactly. So I feel like Float Plan is like the adult is somewhere. If someone liked Start Here, you could be like, you should definitely get this too.
Definitely.
And that is going to flow right into each other. And vice versa. Like when Float Plan comes out, if I'm going to hand sell that, I'm telling you now, that's happening. And then when someone comes back, and they're like, oh, I really like that book you gave me last week. I'm like, hold on a minute. Now, stay with me. Try this one. Go with Start Here. Like, I know it's young adult, but just give it a shot.
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, the girls in Start Here are literally on the brink of adulthood, trying to figure out who they are. So it's really, it is very timely for, even for adults to read that, that remembering like when you're trying to figure out what's going on in your life and you're not sure yet.
When I think a lot of us are in that, I mean, that's basically like midlife crisis type of deals. It's the same thing you did. And then, at the end of high school, we're like, okay, now what? They're about to kick me out into the world and I have no idea what I'm doing. And then as like in your middle age, you're like, oh, I've reached here and I'm supposed to know what I'm doing. I don't.
Yeah, I still don't.
Right? And then Corona hit and now everyone's like you're in this upheaval of like, again, what are we doing? And so many other things too. So when did you start writing? Is a question that I have. And then a follow-up is, when was your first book published? Because you had books out when we were working at Barnes & Noble, right?
Right, I did.
I thought so.
So I have been writing pretty much, I'm sorry, I just saw Sadie's comment. We stopped figuring out who we are after high school? No, we don't, Sadie. We always are still figuring. We're still working on that. I'm above middle age and I'm still trying to figure it out. But I have been writing for pretty much as long as I've been able to hold a pencil. But I didn't really, it wasn't until after I started working at Barnes & Noble and I picked up a book. I was walking through the YA section and I saw this book and went, oh, that's an interesting cover. It was back in the Headless Girls days of covers.
Oh, yeah.
Took it home with me and I loved it so much that it was sort of like a light bulb moment for me. And I'm like, this is what I've been trying to write. So I sat down for NaNoWriMo, which is National Novel Writers Month. And I didn't win. I did not write it in a month, but I wrote enough that I felt really into the story and I didn't stop. So that book was the book that ultimately I got an agent with, and she sold it. And right around the time that she sold it, not only did Twilight hit big, but the economy took a dive and my editor got laid off.
Oh,
and so
that's a good combo.
Yeah. And so when the new editor took over, she had a little more literary bent and she was like, no, not feeling this. We're done with you now. Thank you. Bye. So in the time
the things they don't tell you about writing a book.
Exactly. Right.
Like, that's what it is.
And I never knew that was a thing. I kind of just assumed that, another editor would get it. We'd take it to the end. And then maybe after that, they might not want to have another book with me. But I didn't realize that was, dropping you in the middle of a contract was something that happened, which is fine because while I was waiting to see if we could sell it again, I started writing what ultimately became my debut novel, Something Like Normal. And that one was very, very, very different than the book we were trying to sell. And also while I was writing it, I kind of stumbled into like my own writing style. Mm-hmm. So it worked out for the best, really, that first book never went anywhere and that Something Like Normal became my debut, because like I think the trajectory of my career might be a little different if that book had been the first. So
there you go, blessing in disguise.
Yeah. So Something Like Normal came out in 2012.
Okay.
Yeah. And then 2013 was Where the Stars Still Shine. 2015, The Devil You Know. 2017, In a Perfect World. Last year was Start Here. And then next year is my adult debut, Float Plan.
At the bookstore, there's a local author, Bill Lofhelm, who wrote a thriller series, detective novels, and one of his books is The Devil You Know.
Oh, really?
I went to order it. Oh, I went to order your book, and the owner is like, "Is this the one? Is this what you want?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's the one. Like the one by Trish. That's the one I want. Like we already have Bill's book, and that's what he was like. But it's over on the shelf. Like, no, that's not the one I want. I want this one."
Gotcha. Yeah, it's a little bit common of a title, but the original title was something that was already another YA novel. So It was kind of like, well, I have to pick something else. And since there weren't any other YA books with that title, we kind of just went with it. And it worked out.
Yeah. No, titles are interesting that way. I mean, you want it to be something that's familiar kind of to people or provocative to people, but also not the same, right. Not close enough to something else where people are going to mistake it for something else. And again, as a bookseller, you have that all the time. People come in. I think it's like something about the devil and knowing something. I'm like, okay, let me figure out what you want.
Exactly. I've been there, done that.
Exactly.
So, and the titles too, like almost always change. Like, that's a common question among authors, and they're like, how many titles of yours have changed? And let me see, 1, 2, almost all of mine have. Start Here was one of those things where I was like, I don't know what to call this. And when I sent it to my editor, I'm like, we can change the title if you need to. And she's like, no, we all love it. And I'm like, really?
Okay.
So.
Okay. Sadie's asking, what was the original title?
Of which one?
I guess The Devil She Knows. That's the one we were.
The Devil You Know?
The Devil You Know. Yeah.
Yeah, that one was called Arcadia Falls.
Arcadia Falls. I like that. Then.
So, but yeah, there was another book. Too. Yeah, it was some kind of science fantasy novel. I think I don't remember, but I remember when it came in at Barnes and Noble, and I'm like, oh no, this means I'm gonna have to change my title.
That's how you found out.
Yeah, that is how I found out that I was going to have to change the title. So yeah.
It's not funny, but it is funny.
Yeah. And Float Plan was originally called Apparent Wind, which is a sailing term, but it's also a very difficult to understand sailing term. And I was just like, it's really hard to explain it, let alone apply it to like as a metaphor for someone's life. So I'm like, yeah, it's got to go. And when I changed it to Float Plan, people were like, oh, okay, I like that better. So
yeah, and right off the bat, without having any sailing experience at all, I get the feel for what that title meant before I kind of had an idea. But then after reading it, I definitely completely know what you're going for. So that works. For sure.
It's a much easier to remember title too.
And I'm going to say hi to my mom. So Linda is my mom, and she's literally on the porch outside. And she normally, when I'm in New Orleans and she's in Fort Myers, she normally tunes in and watches along. And she's like, should I watch tonight? I was like, you can if you want to. Like, okay. So she evidently is tuning in from the porch.
That's cool.
So, okay, sailing, like I have zero sailing experience, but it is a fantasy of mine to, first of all, know what I'm doing. Go sailing.
It's still a fantasy of mine. That's still a fantasy of mine, is to know what I'm doing.
So have you always been into sailing, or like, how does that work in your life?
No, I haven't really. Basically, it started when I met my husband. So when I was in college, I met a cute guy. Um, Up in Ohio, there's an island called Put-in-Bay, which basically is like if Key West were in Ohio. Lots of bars. People hang out there at bars and stuff. So I was there one weekend with my friend, and there was a race week happening, a sailboat race week, and I met him there. And so it kind of like was a crash course, because I'm like, well, if I'm going to keep this guy, I'm going to have to learn how to sail. So I kind of learned how to sail. We raced little boats together, and we actually at this point in our lives have 2 sailboats. But like, he's away at work right now in another country, and there's no way I could just go, hey, I'm going to hop on the boat and go for a sail, because I'm not that good at that. Like, if I had it out of the dock and facing in the right direction, I might be able to do that. If I had someone, if I could have like a pilot come back and like steer me back into the dock, we'd be good to go. But I have this deathly fear of crashing.
Yeah, I would have to say that if I narrowed down what my fears of all boating, it's the portion around the dock, the docking, and like the rest of it's like, I feel like once you get out there, you know, as long as you're
totally true.
your storm, you're like, I got this.
Totally true.
So you have 2 sailboats?
Yes. And so here's the fun story. The fun story about our first sailboat is called an Allberg. And it is a very beautiful boat. Like, it's old-fashioned-y kind of, it's just really beautiful lines. It's got that nice curvy back, you know, like angled back, and it's just gorgeous. Lots of teak, and just, you know, it's an old boat. And when I was looking for a boat for the book, I was like, I need something that looks beautiful but not expensive. And my husband's like, okay, how about an Allberg? So I looked it up, and I'm like, oh my God, that's a gorgeous boat. And he had a friend who had one, and he's like, you know, so we got together with him so he could tell me all about what it's like. And he's in the book too. He's Dave in the book, or is Dave in real life.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I was like, you know, if we ever bought a sailboat, I would like an Allberg. And as it turned out, there was a couple from the sailing club back home in Ohio that we were members of, and we lived there, and they were friends with my husband's parents. And my father-in-law got word that they were going to sell the boat. So we made an offer before anyone else found out about it. And so we got the Allberg. But just, during COVID, my husband was quarantined at home for a while, and he was starting to get a little bored. And he was down at the condo where we keep our sailboat, and there's a bigger boat down there, like a cruising boat. And he knew the owner was getting older, so he made him an offer that was ridiculously low. And the guy's like, yeah, I just want to get rid of it, so sure. So now we have 2 sailboats. One of them, the bigger one though, is actually at some point in the next 4-ish years, we're going to sail to
I was going to ask you, now you have this bigger boat, you can actually go out places.
That is the plan. We're going to take it and we're going to sail to the Bahamas and to the Caribbean. We're pretty much going to go to all the places that Anna goes in Float Plan.
All right. Yeah. So the one thing about Float Plan to me is like, I instantly wanted to do this. Like, I've always sort of, I like the idea of sailing, and I love being on boats. I've been on boats before. I've never been, no, that's not true. I have been on a sailboat, but I was not expected to assist in any way.
Right.
You know, so, but the idea of like setting sail has always been this fantasy in the back of my head. And then I'm reading Float Plan, and that's what she decides to do. She basically is like, I'm going to go. This is it. I'm going to do it. And she just puts her stuff on the boat, and off she goes, for better or for worse. And I'm like, yes. Like, not only am I rooting for her because I'm like, okay, this is what you need in your life. Yes, go do this. But I'm like, I can do that. If she can do this, I can do this. And then of course, in my head, I'm like, that's not a real person, Raina. She's not real.
And you also do kind of need to have a little bit of experience. You really do. I mean, even the tiny little bit that she had was enough to at least like make her feel sort of confident. But it is tricky. And, you know, it's like when you're writing a novel, you don't want to get into all of the little bits of things that can go wrong, because then it would be a really boring book. Like diehard sailors would be like, I'm afraid that diehard sailors are going to read this book and go like, this isn't realistic because things break down all the time. And they do, but it's like, if I wrote about things breaking down all the time, then nothing fun would ever happen to her. And so, you know, so it's a tricky balance between like over romanticizing it and over making it overly realistic to the point where nobody would ever want to go sailing. So, but it is. There are
a couple things that go wrong with the boat for sure that put her in a position where not only she has to figure out how she's going to care for the boat, but like, because she's, for a bit of it, she's a woman on her own. Is she going to ask for help? Is she going to hire in help? Is she going to try and figure it out? Like those questions too, which I enjoyed, like the way she had to work that out in her head. To me, I could tell that you related. This is my imagination, is that you related. And actually you saying this now, you're like, I couldn't take the boat on my own. But I'm sure that's the way she felt, right?
True.
Because she had some experience, but she was always in a team, right? And now all of a sudden she's on her own. So I bet you, if you had to take the boat out.
If I had to, I probably could. I would probably just have to put a bunch of fenders around it until I got out of the marina, and then I could gather them all up.
It's like bumper boats until you get out. But it's good. It's fine. Yeah. Look back now, it's fine. It was fine. They'll never notice. That's funny. So you said your husband is in the Bahamas?
Yes. He runs marina operations for a development company in Bimini. So he lives there basically for several weeks at a time. Then he'll come home to visit. He was home when their country went into a really pretty heavy duty lockdown. They basically said, you can either stay and lock down with us or go home. And they sent most of the, Americans and everything home. And he's like, there's no point in me sitting here doing nothing for however long it takes. So he did come home. So I don't need to see him again anytime soon. I'm kidding.
But he's going to be tuning in.
No, he won't.
You're like, no, I'm safe.
Nah, it'll be fine. So yeah, he's in Bimini, and it's pretty nice because I can go visit him. Well, I could visit him until COVID. Now it's like you have to have a test, you have to quarantine. So we have a really weird relationship right now.
Right, and it's put even more. I don't know. I mean, it is strained because you can't just like pick up and go. You can't plan like, I miss you. How about I come over next week? And play for a little bit. It's this big long process. So can you go if you quarantine, or are we not allowed to go at all? Like
you have to quarantine for 2 weeks while you're there. So it's kind of like, if you have that kind of time, then sure. But like most people just want to buzz over there because it's only like 50 miles from Miami. So to just buzz over there for like a weekend, you can't do that. There are a lot of people who actually own property. There's houses over there that are owned by Americans. And so if they want to come and quarantine and stay on the island, they can do that. And I think that's basically how they've kind of worked their rules, so that if people are cruising and they're in the country for 2 weeks, they can stay on their boat. Yeah. Or people who own homes can come and stay at their house. But like most of the hotels are closed. So you can't even just hop on a plane and go and say, oh, I'll just quarantine at this hotel. No. So.
Yeah. And that's similar. Like in New Orleans, we're sort of doing similar things. It's not like tourists can't come. They absolutely can. And we can't make you quarantine, right? Because we're just a city. Mm-hmm. But a lot of like hotels aren't open. Like you have to figure out where you're going to stay. And like none of our bars are open. A lot of our restaurants are closed. Retail can be, but it's like 25% capacity. So at the bookstore, we can have 7 people in the shop at one time.
Oh, wow.
And of course you have to do 6 feet of distance and everybody's wearing a mask. Which is kind of hard sometimes in that it's a small space. It's a small space. And if you're ever, whenever you come visit New Orleans sometime, because you totally should.
Oh, definitely.
Come in, you'll see it's not a large space, but 7 people is about as much as we can handle while maintaining, like allowing everyone to get around everybody and see all the sections.
Right.
So it's not impossible to come visit for sure, but it's not like user friendly, maybe is the right way to say it.
And I mean, I guess that's sort of a good workaround, like to keep people safe. It's frustrating, but at the same time, I get it.
Like, when as a local, what's open, and I mean, everything is that you would want as a local is open. But as a tourist, when you want to go in shops up and down, thing and French Quarter, Bourbon Street, that's pretty much not, because most of that stuff isn't open at all or is open at very low capacity.
Gotcha.
So, yeah. Well, that's interesting. So how long has he been working in the Bahamas?
So he's been there for more than a year. And so it's been, I mean, before COVID, it was really fun. Like, he would come home every 4 or 5 weeks, and I would go over there and, like, just hang out for 4 or 5 days. And so it was really cool. Like, I'm looking forward to going back. If I didn't have to stay there for, it's like I can't leave the house for that long. It's like the plants will die and the grass will get too long. And so it's like I have to stay on top of that kind of stuff. But I'm hoping that if they, once they relax the quarantine, then maybe I can go over for a week or so and, take the dog and we can go hang out with him.
Right. So what kind of dog do you have?
I have a Border Collie Cattle Dog mix.
Okay.
And she's a weird dog.
She's a weird dog? What makes her weird?
Well, when I was looking for a dog, I was looking for a young dog, and she fit the bill in that regard because she was only about 9 months old when I got her. So she was youngish. But I was looking for some, like a fun, playful dog that would like to go swimming and, potentially go sailing with us someday. And she's a big ball of anxiety.
Oh, no.
She's leash reactive. She's not in love with meeting strangers. Before COVID, we were working with a personal trainer, like a private trainer, to get her over those hurdles. And she was doing so well. And now we've gone backwards.
Yeah.
She likes going out on the boat. She absolutely hates swimming. I've tried to make her swim. And she's just like, she'll do it because she loves me and she will do what I ask her to do. But like, I'll take her out in the water and like, she immediately just turns around and just makes a beeline for sure.
As soon as she gets the go ahead from you, she's like, okay, I'm out.
So, I mean, the good thing I can take away from that is if, when we go sailing, and she's with us, if she falls in the water, like, she will do everything in her power to get back on the boat. So I guess there's that, but like, she's definitely not, I mean, once that she loves you, she's wonderfully warm and cuddly. But until that, she's just like a cactus. She's just, don't touch me, stay away from me. And I'm just like, this was not the dog that I asked for.
It was not the dog you had imagined.
But she was the dog that was meant for me, because she would have been a hard dog for someone else. Someone who had like expectations of her being like an agility dog or any of those dog sports. They would have been really disappointed because she's just, she likes laying on the couch. She likes laying on the couch. She will run if she has to, but she fits in really well with me. We sit on the couch. Sometimes we go for walks in the woods, but that's like literally our big exercise. She
sounds like almost a dog for somebody who wants a cat kind of situation, where she sort of like lays around and she'll do stuff if you want to.
Yeah.
Please don't make me.
Like even just like, I've taught her a ton of tricks. She's a really, really smart dog, and I've taught her like a million tricks, and she'll do them all, but she'll only do them because the end game is food. Like,
right.
She's so food motivated that it's just like, you want me to jump over your leg? Okay, sure. Where's the food now? Right. Like, she has no enthusiasm for the trick. Only the treat.
And you know what? Once you learn the motivator though, you figured it out. So you're good. So I want to reiterate to everybody who is watching, if you have any questions or comments or anything like that about books, writing, book selling, sailing, anything else, throw them at us and we will do our best to answer all of those questions.
I was checking because I got a message that I thought maybe was meant to go to our comments. It was from Matthew, who used to work with us at Barnes & Noble. And he said, too. I tried joining, but it won't let me. So I don't know if he got in, but Matthew.
How that works. Yeah, if you made it in, I mean, try again. Hold on, I'm gonna send him a message. And be like, try again. Try again. I saw that out of the corner of my eye too. I'm like, ignore it. I don't need to read that. No, I did need to read it. So I have a 13-year-old son.
Okay.
And he sounds a lot like your dog.
My dog.
Nice. We went for a walk in the woods today and he didn't want to do that. We've been trying to get out and do things like that. Mm-hmm. With COVID, especially, like everything indoors is mostly closed and definitely not safe. So we're trying to get out and take walks and go to parks. And he's like, God, no, Mom, why? Please. It's so hot. It's so this, it's so that. He doesn't want to do it. So yeah, that's another thing. Your dog reminds me of both the cat and my son.
That is literally the one thing that she does love, though, is that I think that if I took her out like on a long hike, which I can't do that. Mm-hmm. Like we were working our way up to it, and it's like it's too hot for that right now. But like that's the end game for us is to take hikes, like long hikes. Like and she will do that. She will walk in the woods forever. Like that is her thing. Like that's her jam. And so that's cool that there is something that she really, really enjoys. So the nice part about that is no matter wherever we go, I'm sure there's plenty of places where we can walk. And so she will enjoy traveling with us. She just isn't going to really like the swimming part.
Yeah. You also have like my fantasy traveling family. So you were telling me before we went live that your daughter's about to go to South Korea to teach English. Your son has this big, long Latin American, like road trip planned. It's a little bit on hold right now, but like, how did you win the lottery in like traveling families?
I think it's genetic. I really do, because my mom was a huge traveler. My husband's parents traveled a lot too. So I don't know whether it's just it kind of rubbed off on us just because of life. Like I was born in Germany and my grandmother lived in Berlin until I was in college. And so my mom and I went to Germany quite frequently to visit her. And I think, it just, you get sort of used to it. And then my mom took my kids when they were young, she took them to Germany. And so it's just one of those things. Like once you have a taste of the world, you just want to keep tasting it. So,
I mean, that's the way I feel about it.
Yeah. I'm really disappointed because we were going to try to go to Ireland for our 30th wedding anniversary. And, we can't get in anywhere right now. I think they're letting people in Ireland, but I saw a lot of Irish people complaining about that. So I don't want to be that American right now.
Right, exactly.
So I think we're just going to hold off and like go next year to somewhere else. But, I don't know.
Well, that's kind of, I love traveling. I've always have at least one trip that it's on the books and another one I am planning. It's just been that way forever. And it's similar, like my parents traveled a lot and my mom took my sister and I, when we were younger, we would go on these like 2-month road trips. We would leave like 3 days after school let out in May or June. And we would get back like a week before school started. We would just do these huge road trips. And I loved every minute of it. And I want to do that more. I have done that as much as possible. But I will say, like, Corona has brought into, like, has highly highlighted all the places I haven't been. Mm-hmm. And all the places that I thought, well, I'll plan that. Like, I'll plan that. I'll put that on, it'll be next year or in my 5-year plan or whatever. And all of a sudden, I'm not allowed to go. I can't go.
Yeah.
I shouldn't go. And I'm like, oh, no. Oh no. Now
Then
it's
you really,
like,
really, really want to go there. Yeah.
right.
Yeah. It's
And
rough.
the idea, I mean, I think it's something that we took for granted, and people who travel a lot definitely, I think, are experiencing that more than other people that are just perfectly happy sitting
I
at
am
home.
I am feeling it so hard right
Right?
now. So
Even
in
if you
two
didn't have anywhere that you were going to go, all of a sudden you can't go. And I'm like, no, wow,
yeah.
places. And what if, this sort of fear that, like, okay, when can I go? And what happens if I don't? What if they open the borders and I don't make it to Ireland and then I can't go again? Oh no.
Yeah, I know. There's so many. There's so many. And it's like in 2018, we went to Martinique. And
Mhm.
it was one of those kind of things where we were just like, let's, like when we bought the boat, we had this dumb idea that like, what if we buy this boat and we decide we get to the Caribbean and we hate it, which is
That's fair. I mean, it
I
could
mean, it's
happen.
fair, but also like knowing us, I'm like, why would we hate it? But so we went to Grenada in 2016, and in 2017 we did a charter with some friends, and went to some of the places in the Grenadines that Anna goes in float plan. And in 2018 we decided to go to Martinique, which is was different because they're part of France and everyone speaks French, and it is not a country that a lot of people do speak English. So we kind of struggled with that. But one day when we were on the beach, this little boy comes up right in front of my husband and he starts grabbing sand like right at my husband's feet. And so Phil looks at him and he just points to him and he says, "My sand." And this boy doesn't know what Phil said exactly, but he got the gist. So he grabs the sand and gives him this look and takes off running. And so eventually the two of them were like playing with each other. And this little boy has a stick like a gun and he's chasing my husband all over the beach. And, it was the cutest thing. And at one point, his mom and I were basically like Google translating back and forth so we could have a conversation. And when she finally called her son over, she explained to him that my husband didn't speak French. And his face was like, wait, how is that possible? We understood each other perfectly well. Like they played with each other for 2 hours. But what I'm getting at here after that long story is that we've stayed in touch with the woman and her son. And I just literally had a conversation with her a few days ago. Like again, I have to Google translate and everything. And so I have this really like I miss them and I want to go back so bad, but like when will COVID let us go?
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's another thing I love about traveling. Like I've met people, some I've stayed in touch with. I mean, most of them I don't, but for that hour or that day or something where you are talking to them, it's an interaction you don't normally get from strangers,
Exactly.
If you meet a stranger like at the grocery store, you generally don't talk to them about much of anything. Maybe, oh, I was trying to get that soda out of the case. Sorry, I'm in your way. Like, oh, or nice shirt or something.
Yeah.
And
it is. But it's just like, it's just amazing to me how quickly someone can just basically like leave permanent footprints on your heart and you just want to go back to them. And, like the little boy was about 3. So now we're, 3 years out, he's 6 years old. And I'm like, he's not going to remember us.
No.
And so we have to get back there. And my husband's like, well, I would like to go back to Grenada, which is where we went first. And I'm like, the people who live there are adults. They're not going to forget us. If we don't go back next year, let's just go to Martinique instead and see our little boy.
That's amazing. And now too, with like digital pictures and the internet and all of this stuff, you can stay in touch in a way that you couldn't.
It's so awesome. Like she literally sent me pictures of them, like selfies right then and there. And like, sent me a voice file that was like, we love you, we miss you, come see us soon. And I'm just crying.
Like, yes,
I want to come see you again.
So yeah, you have the travel family that I want.
Okay. Well, you got to take them places.
I know. No, I take my son all over the place, all of this. I think right now we're in that like just awkward teenage phase because he just turned he turned 13 in December. So
13
he's 13
is the
and
worst.
a half. And up until like last year, he was all about it. He was all about, let's go places. He's totally fine. And then like halfway through last year, he's like, why? I don't want to go. Why are we going here? What are we doing? You know? So I'm hoping that we push through that.
You will. You will. Trust me on that. I've had two. I've had one of each. And 13, like my son was always a little more like rebellious and, you know, a little more problematic. And 13 was pretty annoying.
That's dishonest, I think.
And then my daughter has been pretty much a breeze. She's probably listening to me right now, but she's been pretty much a breeze. And so 13 for us, like for maybe most 13 parents of 13-year-olds, like, oh my God, my 13-year-old is a nightmare. She wasn't a nightmare, but you could see the difference. You could hear the difference. You could tell the difference. And then she turned 14 and it was over. So,
well, that's good.
Yeah. So
I'm looking forward to
there's
that.
hope.
It's good.
Oh, Sadie's got another question for us.
So what are you writing these days?
Okay. So I am working on a follow-up to Float Plan, which I don't know if we actually didn't really talk about how Anna, the main character, her fiance dies by suicide, and she takes the boat that they were going to sail together on, and she sails through the Caribbean. And when she realizes that it's a little bit more than she can handle alone, she finds someone, a very handsome someone, to help her. And he's kind of been through his own sort of trauma, and neither one of them are kind of seeing their lives unfold the way they expected. And so together they realize they can kind of maybe forge a new life. But the next project that I'm working on is actually kind of set in the same universe, in that Anna, the main character of Float Plan, she has a sister, Rachel, and Rachel has been working in a hotel for many, many years. She has, aspirations of managing a hotel, someday owning her own hotel. And when she is fired for something that she didn't do, she's kind of at a loss. And she impulsively, kind of inspired by her sister, takes a job at a small hotel on an island in Lake Erie in Ohio. And when she gets there, she discovers that it's really not exactly what she expected it to be. But it gives her a chance to kind of rebuild her life. So I'm working on this. It's not a book yet. I'm hoping that it will be. We're waiting to find out if it will be. But in the meantime, I'm really excited about it because Anna's sister was not always the most likable character. She has a lot of resentment going on. And so in this book, I get a chance to kind of tackle that and kind of get to the root of why she feels the way she does and what she's going through and how her life can improve by changing her situation. So
I love that idea because, as you said, in Float Plan, Rachel isn't the perspective that you get of her is from Anna's perspective. So
exactly,
you are only hearing, how she's not supporting her sister and how she's putting pressure on her sister and things like that. But you don't have any idea where she's coming from. And potentially the new book gives us an opportunity to see kind of the same family from these different angles.
Exactly.
Yeah, I really appreciate that.
And so interestingly enough, too, it's like, it's not deliberate. I mean, it's always a hard thing to talk about, and you might have had other authors tell you this, but sometimes like the characters kind of dictate what's happening rather so much than you being in charge. It's my mom just said to me the other day, she's like, how is it that your characters can kind of get out of, like get away from what you had intended for them? She's like, you're basically the mastermind. But sometimes like what you think that needs to happen and what ends up on the page are like two different things. And so it's interesting that when Rachel is now talking to Anna and we get Anna from Rachel's perspective, Anna doesn't seem like the perfect sister either. So it's, right. And that was definitely not deliberate. But when the conversations happened, I was kind of like, oh, wow. Oh my gosh, I did not expect that. So it is. I mean, which is not to say like you're going to suddenly stop liking Anna, but you're going to be able to see her in a different, through someone else's eyes and say, okay, what was going on between them was going on between them, not just, from one sister's, it wasn't like one sister's fault.
Oh yeah, I have a sister. She's downstairs. And if you ask me, I can come up with a list of things that are amazing about her, and I could also come up with a list of things that.
Oh, I'm sure.
But if you go downstairs, she's going to say, not the same things, but she's got a list of both, on both sides as well. So that's real life. Like, yeah. I think if you had built it differently, like if Anna turned out to not have any problems from Rachel's perspective, we'll be like, well, that's not real. Right, that's not real. Real life doesn't work that way. Everybody does things, and especially to like your family, the people that you have been in contact with the most or seemingly know you the best, they know, you have wronged them in ways you had no intention of doing.
Exactly.
And you don't mean it. You don't mean it. Right. Those things, but you don't know how much it like eats at them until one day they go, yeah, you've been doing that for like 10 years. I'm like, wait, what? That's been a problem? Right. I didn't know that. Right. So many times you don't like intend it at all. Sometimes my sister's like, well, Raina's not going to cook it. And I'm like, what? I keep a whole family alive. Like, what do you mean? She's like, yeah, but you won't cook it here. And I'm like, oh, okay. I guess I don't cook enough for everyone when we're home. I don't chip in enough. Wow. You know what I mean? Like, and that's like how I learned that a few years ago. It's like, but I didn't, obviously not intentional type of thing, but like, that's just one of those things that'll come out if you're getting the other side of the story.
And sisterhood is complicated.
Oh, absolutely. Do you have siblings?
I do not. I have step siblings, which that is a story that I probably shouldn't get into. We're not close. Let's just leave it at we're not close.
Yeah. But yeah, there's whole, like, my sister and I are interesting because, like, we were really close growing up, and we are super different. We're just very different people.
Right.
And then there was a period of time where we just did not. We just did our own thing. And then as like adults, like real adults through our 20s, like late 20s, somewhere in there, we were like, you're not too bad, somewhere in there. And then now, like we get along and talk and stuff. And like the older we get, I was always sort of envious of these people that had siblings that like talked on the phone every day or talked on the phone like every week or something and texted people, each other images and whatever. Uh-huh. And I'm like, nah, we don't really do that. But I find that the older that we both get, the more we do that, like just talk to each other. That's like fair. Stop using like mom as the middleman kind of situation, and actually talk to each other. So
that's cool.
I don't know how that works. How about, so I have another float plan / next book question. Their mom Anna talks about their mom a bit too, because their mom and Rachel are back. It's Christmas? Is it Christmas or Thanksgiving?
Yeah, it's Christmas at the Christmas. She leaves right at Thanksgiving and she's gone at Christmas.
Right. And so they're back, home having the celebration. And so like, does mom come into play at all in Rachel's book as well? I mean, that's like that dynamic made sense to me. It's me and my sister and my mom, that's like that's our family. So.
And yeah, because like Rachel's been living with her mom. And so when she makes a decision to take this job and leave, like it's a big deal. Like it's a big deal. And in fact, I've written the first draft and sometimes I'm like, what is their relationship adversarial to the point where like this is going to be a really big deal? Is her mom going to just lose it completely and be really upset about it? Or is their relationship close enough that, like a good conversation is going to fix that, So right. I'm still working on it. Like I figured it out how I want it to be, but
like you were saying, it could, once you start putting it on the page, right, it moves in a different direction.
And it could change. But I mean, like right now, her mom doesn't want her to leave, mainly because like she's in this kind of comfort zone. They all sort of got into this comfort zone of being uncomfortable. you know. It's like
Yeah.
all of them. Even Anna was part of that, like living in this whole, like, we're all uncomfortable, we're all, but also there's something to be said about her mom, like having her daughters there and being happy about that.
Mhm.
At the same time, she's sacrificing a lot. So, you know, it's that sacrifice that kind of Anna points out, like, you know, maybe mom would like to be alone for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that starts a little bit of an argument, but I don't want to take her, I don't want to take, you know, my daughter away from her, but maybe mom could come visit you
Right.
instead. Maybe she would like to have a boyfriend. Maybe she would like to
What?
have, you know, people over for a party, or, you know, maybe she doesn't want to babysit your kid every night, you know, so.
Right. Well, and then moms are stuck between this position of like wanting their kids to be really close and be around me and like, let's all do that. But also like, okay, this is a job opportunity for you. Okay, maybe you should do that. Or, you know, you found a guy and you're sailing, go do that. Okay, that's good for you. That's something you want. Yay, go away from me.
Exactly.
But also like, come home.
and that's the thing, like when it comes right down to it, their mom literally left the country she was living at to follow a guy.
Right.
So it's like, do you really have a leg to stand on here, lady? You know. So, you know, but she's the character in the book. And I mean, I don't know at this point where I am in the book, I don't know how much more of a character she'll be, at least for a while.
Right.
Because, you know, Rachel has to get out on her own for a bit and explore this kind of new life she's building for herself. And
well, this is an interesting conversation too, because not only, I mean, we're talking about like plot lines and characters in the book and stuff, but this is sort of a glimpse into like how book writing and publishing works, because Float Plan, although I have actually already read it, doesn't come out until March of next year.
Right.
And then the book we're talking is conceptual book that doesn't even really exist.
It doesn't exist. It's like in my head right now.
Wouldn't come out, I mean, for maybe 2 years after that, if we go on the timeline that you want, right? The good, everything goes well timeline. We're talking about potentially, like, I would say 2023, maybe even at 22, 23.
Maybe 22, maybe. Because, yeah. I mean, if I can get it written fast enough, we could get it out in 2022, which is my goal. Because I'd like to do a 21, 22, 23 kind of thing. Because I do have another book in that universe in my head.
That's even more in your head, like even less of an
it's more of an elevator pitch right now. It's not really like I don't have like a complete, you know, like anything. But what I can tell you this is like that one features Anna's best friend, Carla, and Keen's brother.
I like the brother. I
love
thought
him.
His brother was like so interesting.
I love him.
Gave such a great glimpse into where Keen is from and who his family really is. And clearly he's from this like warm, lovey family. You got that kind of, or at least he had that background. He got that somewhere. And then the brother shows up and you're like, oh, this is a family thing. Like they're just like the type of people who like come up and give you a hug and you don't really know them. And they're like hugging you. Like for me, for those people, like they come in for a hug and I'm like, cool, we're hugging. We're those friends now. And like, I'm a lot more like, I want to be that person who just walks up and like hugs.
Yeah. I'm not that person.
And I'm just like, I will hug you. Like it doesn't make me uncomfortable to do it. It's just, I'm not the first one that makes that. I'm not the one who's going to initiate it.
Same.
I'm very happy when people do. So by the way, once COVID is over, everyone, go ahead. I'm cool with it. Give me a hug. But like, I am not the initiator. For sure. Do you have a playlist started for the new book?
I do. It's on Spotify.
Okay.
And I think I'm listed on there under Trish Doller. I'm not really positive because I switched so that it would go through Facebook, and actually have my name on the you know. But yeah, and the playlist for the new book is called From the Ground Up. Because
you'll have to look it up on your end and make sure that like, you
Sadie,
have
look it up
and comment, like put it in the comments.
Yeah,
That's one of those things. Trish,
okay.
you know where it is. You go right to it.
Yeah,
and you put it in the comments so that people can get to it like easy enough.
I don't know if I can do that while we're sitting here or not.
Do you make playlists for all your books?
Yes.
Okay. So here's a question. Do you make the playlist kind of for yourself, and that's what you were like listening to as you imagined the characters or wrote the book? Or is this something you build afterwards once you say, okay, this is what I think she would listen to? Or
no, it's more like stuff that I listen to that kind of puts me into that headspace to write or reminds me of the characters. So yeah, and it's sort of it's almost like the book. It's a work in progress. So I'll hear something and go, "Ooh, I like that. That'd be good." And then I put it on the playlist. And so I almost have a work in progress or a writing playlist.
Right.
And so it's like what I use when I'm writing, but eventually I kind of have an official playlist for each book, and that one is narrowed down to the most appropriate. So
there's another author that I follow a lot, Bridget Kemmerer. She's a YA author.
Yeah,
and she does this thing
post a comment. I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries. I think actually that you might have to go to Facebook. So you might want to do it after we're done here in a few minutes. But she does this thing with when her new books come out, and she has like songs that remind her of certain characters, and it's a Facebook story or an Instagram story idea. So here's some content for you. You like post, okay, Anna, and then does the thing where Facebook or Instagram like puts the lyrics on the page, like puts the music right on there with it. Yeah. So you can make those, and then that'll tell you who goes like, oh, this is a song that I thought of Anna, and Keen, this is a song that like goes to see.
And I want to do that. Like right now, I don't want to give too much away. So
it's too early. That's for when it comes out. You got to bookmark that, and then like you could do one for Start Here in August or something like that. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, I
have content ideas.
Excellent.
You have to grill dinner. Wait, are you gone? What are you eating?
She left us.
Did she leave already, or is she still telling us what dinner is going to be? We have to wait a second and see if it comes through. I think everyone here is eating dinner as well, but that's okay. I'm drinking my dinner until I go. Yes, exactly. Did you got your rum punch?
I did. Well, that was one of the things. Like, I am not much of a hard liquor drinker. I'm more of a beer and wine kind of person. Mm-hmm. But when we went to Grenada, they had like every island has their own kind of recipe for rum punch. It's their own formula. Literally down to every person, every bar, every restaurant, every island. So there's not necessarily like one formula that works. And so like when we came home, I was like, okay, I'm going to hone in on what it was that I liked. And I've got my own rum punch formula. So, and I can tell you
there's some more content for you.
I know. Well, I've already shared that. I guess I've shared that with my publisher too, like my rum punch recipe.
Yes.
I will tell you that the secret to it.
Here it
is
I'm ready.
Fresh nutmeg.
Okay.
Grated on the top. It's you gotta have it. Like, okay,
so where were you when they did that? That you borrowed that from, or is that something you did?
That was in Grenada. And I mean, every drink that you get, even in Martinique, they call it a planter's punch instead of a rum punch, but it's basically the same. And they'll put a little bit of cinnamon on the top too. And so if you want to get a little extra fancy, you grate some cinnamon, but it doesn't taste the same if you use like the ground,
like if you buy a little,
my son did that once with pumpkin pie spice. Ooh. And he said it was amazing, and I believe him, but I wouldn't do that. Like, it wouldn't. I just
you're like, let him make it and you can take a little sip of it, but you don't want to commit to an entire
no. So for me, just the grating, I have a nice little grater, a really good one, and just take, you can buy fresh nutmeg. You can buy whole nutmegs.
Absolutely. And I do that with cinnamon all the time.
Yeah. Like, cinnamon is so much better freshly grated. Like, I never realized. But
spices in general are one of those things that, like, you take for granted. If you're not like big into cooking and stuff, I definitely take them for granted. And then you have some good stuff, and you're like, oh, this is what people are talking about.
Yep. Yep, exactly.
Exactly. Well, we have made it to our
We
hour.
did it.
We did it.
Wow, I didn't even recommend any books.
We can do that. We can do that. What are you reading? What are you reading?
I am reading. I'll do my YA pick right now is Rebel Spy by Veronica Rossi.
Mm-hmm.
So incredibly good. Set during the Revolutionary War, where a young woman assumes someone else's identity and becomes a spy. It's so good, so good. And then one of my favorite adult novels right now, and everybody's talking about it, is Beach Read by Emily Henry. Yeah. It's ridiculously good, and I love it.
I haven't read that yet, but it's one that we sell a ton of it at the bookstore. We've been selling, and it's interesting too, because right now there's this like part where no one's able to really go on the vacations that they at least had planned, and people are still coming in and going, I need like that summer beachy kind of read, even though they're not going anywhere. It's still summer, and people are still like want that, and that's been kind of flying off of our shelves.
It's such a good book. It's so good. I'm like jealous. I wish I had written it.
There are some books that you go back, like people say, what book you would like to experience for the first time again? And this is an interesting thing because I recently read the new one by Mike Birbiglia, and we're doing an event with him on Monday, and that's originally why I started reading it. But then I liked it so much that I went and got it on audio. So like this has been my car driving audio because he's a comedian. So
right.
And I was reading it, and I could kind of hear him, and I'm laughing, and it's funny. I'm like, I can just hear him do this. So I got the audio, and that is like, I don't do that a lot. Like usually I listen or I read. Right. I'm not one of these people that like do both or read and then listen or listen and read. But this one, because he reads it himself. Also, if he didn't read it himself, I probably wouldn't have done it.
Yeah, no. With a book like that, you want to listen to the actual person. That's cool.
Yeah, cool. That's definitely, that was in what I was listening to in the car a lot of the way here. Cool. And I have my paperback that I'm reading, The Truth Project, which is a YA book, and ones that's like written kind of in prose.
Oh,
and there are a lot of those coming out in the fall, which they are great for, especially for like readers who want to read but they're intimidated by bigger books, because they're so lyrical, and depending on whether it's depending on the writer, sometimes it's like it's kind of rap, it's got a beat, and other times it's like poetic and slower. But you can, when you're reading it, that's the way it just flows.
Right. That's cool.
This is about a girl who is trying to get off easy doing a science project, and she like does the cotton swab for her DNA and sends away the DNA, and she's like, it's going to come back, and she's just going to like basically write an essay about what the little paper says. And the paper says some things that she was not expecting at all.
Ooh, that sounds like something I would love.
Yeah, so that's really good, and that was like the physical book I brought for my trip.
Cool.
I cut myself down to one. That's not true. I have a poetry book, but I finished it with 2 physical books and 1 ebook, which is not out yet. So we're not talking about that one, and my audiobook there.
Very cool.
Trip for a bookseller reader person.
Nice.
There we go. We made it. Right. And I will post the links to the books we talked about in the comments so everybody can find those.
And I'll post the playlist links, both Flow Plan and the work in progress. So
absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Trish.
This is cool. Thank you for having me. This is awesome.
And thanks everybody who tuned in.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in.
And we'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.